What's going on, everyone? This is Drew Code Sports Talk, and I am your host, Andrew Wright. And over in the Clovis CIA is my co-host, Cody Johnson. Cody.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the show. We got a jam-packed one for you. We got some fantasy football, AFC East, and, of course, a little bit of Drew Tate questions, which I am dying to ask Drew, although we just went through them a little bit, but you guys are going to want to stay tuned for that. So, try not to fight anybody in this episode, you guys, because Drew tried to yesterday. But with that being said, guys, let's get started.
Take off from a break off from the weak minds. They can stay soft. You can change lives. You create thoughts. Never waste time. You got one shot. You got one life. Better pop off. What do you like? Make a dream job. No 9-5. No mean boss. Just my life and free thoughts.
That's right. 2 weeks in a row, ladies and gentlemen. We are back. Almost not 2 weeks in a row. But luckily, everything fell into place to where we came here. So we're very happy that you guys are here this week. We are happy to be here. We are going back to StreamYard. As Cody said in the episode last week, we were doing it through Riverside. We had a lot of technical difficulties with it that we found out later that it was going through Riverside. So we kind of had to can it and come right back to our X StreamYard. So we are back with our X, but you know what? Sometimes that's okay. So here we are. We are back on StreamYard, and actually, you know what? I just feel so comfortable. It's just, I know it. I want to hug it. So it's getting weird now. I got to stop. Anyway, so before we get into everything, which we have a ton to talk about, we have MLB, we have NFL. A lot of NFL, by the way. We have fantasy football questions and a little sprinkle, if you will, of NBA. So there is a lot to cover. So, but before we get into all that, Cody, how you doing, man?
Doing good, man. I'm glad that we're back to here. I don't want to say we went back to our ex. We just had to know what was important to us and then come back to what was meaningful, and that's what we did. And so
you know what? We were in a relationship. We went on a break. We downloaded Tinder, was on that for a day, and we're like, you know what? I don't like it. I don't want to do this. I'm gonna go back.
Just realize that we lost.
And we convinced her to come back. So
yeah,
I don't know why I keep making this analogy. I can't stop.
It was a good one. Anyways, so I'm doing well, and I think I can't stop. You know what I can't stop thinking of? I can't stop thinking of your game yesterday, Slugger. For those that don't know, Andrew is kind of a coach of a softball team, which his brother-in-law is on. And he had an interesting evening last night, and I get a text that said, "Dude, you should have been there. Almost came to blows."
No, we said we almost threw hands.
Just please tell those that don't know what happened, because it was okay. Well, it was great to hear about it.
All right. Well, I'll try and make it quick here. Yes, my brother-in-law, he got a team of his former, guys that he played with on his high school baseball team. Got a couple of guys from there, got a couple of girls from the softball team. All of them basically all graduated the same year. They're all friends. And they said, hey, let's have a league together where we can still play together. So he got the team together, and the first week he actually asked me and my wife to play. So we played. And that was the first time we had played in years, due to kids and injuries and stuff like that. Jobs, that kind of is important too, and COVID. And then, the second week he was like, hey, we won't need you, so you guys are good. So we just sat on the stands, and it was actually the team that we played yesterday, but they were kind of yelling at my brother-in-law constantly. And so my wife and I were like, they need to chill. So we were kind of like yelling back a little bit, like, hey, why don't you calm down, stuff like that. So my brother-in-law after the game came back and was like, man, they were just like constantly like talking to them, and he was telling us stuff that we didn't hear on the sideline. And so we were like, well, shoot, man, like if you want us to like kind of like coach you, because that was the other issue that they were having was they were having issues with like, okay, there's a guy ball and a girl ball. You got to switch it every at bat because it has to go guy, girl, guy, girl, guy, girl. And you have to have like, there's a certain time limit. So you got to have someone, you know, on the on deck circle, stuff like that. It's just like all technical stuff that no one really gives two craps about. So we were like, okay, we'll help you out with it. So my wife and I had been doing it for a couple of weeks. And then this past week, my brother-in-law was like, hey, we're short guys. Can you play? And I was like, yeah, I'll play. That's fine. And he was like, I need you to play third base. And I was like, great. I haven't played third base since I was like 20 years old. So this is going to be fun. So I, you know, I was playing. I actually did okay with catching. My throwing, I was kind of struggling with a little bit in my hitting, but that's not the story. I'm just really upset about it, and I need to get it out. Anyway, so they were just like yelling again, hey, we need the girl ball. Hey, we need the guy ball. And we're like, hey, chill, like relax. We got it. We're trying to find the ball. Just relax. Sorry, we don't have it like up in our pockets or something. And so they're just constantly yelling at us. So we finally, my wife and I, we finally get fed up with it. We're like, hey, relax. We got it. We understand. Okay. We're all here on the field. We hear it. We know it. We know what's going on. Calm down. So they're getting upset. You know, they're getting mad that we're talking back to them. My wife throws the ball, and this pitcher has to bend over and get it. God forbid this pitcher has to bend over and get it. So, and he's a bigger guy. And I'm not going to lie to you, I made fun of his weight a little bit later because I was getting really pissed off. But anyway, the shortstop on their team was like talking back as well. My wife threw it one time and it bounced up and he went and got it and he's getting all mad. So the shortstop says, hey, why don't you throw it throw it like that next time, but with a little less enthusiasm. And my wife said, bet. And so my wife then threw a lob up to the pitcher, where then still one bounce, and I was like, God, this is great. And so they're getting all pissed off because we're doing it right back to them. And so I was constantly, you know, talking to the pitcher, talking to the catcher. We were just going back and forth, saying stuff. And he then, the pitcher had an at bat, and he deliberately, and I know he did, because this guy you can tell he's obviously played for years. He hits directly at the pitcher, like line drive right at the pitcher. And so luckily our pitcher was young enough to where he was able to snag it and got him out. But we took exception to that. So we were just kind of going back and forth at them. And eventually the umpire had to like calm everyone down. Was like, hey, you guys need to cool it. And I was still yelling things from the dugout, of course, and from third base, and saying that he's getting all peepees because he can't even freaking run or bend over, and he keeps getting out. So, of course, he's going to be mad. And, you know, my wife is, she's on there like, all right, Andrew, we've got it now. So there was a lot more that I can't really get into. But basically, yeah, we almost came to throwing hands, and luckily it didn't. You know, they had to calm me down, but I did feel valid because first of all, my wife had my back. Of course, I was like, I'm ready to fight. My wife's like, my back is hurting. I'm not ready to fight. And I was like, oh, now when it comes to blows, everyone is gonna back away. Even my brother-in-law was like, I don't know, I think I hurt my back too. And I was like, get out of here, you guys. You're 18 years old. Get it. Yeah.
They sound like they're from Clovis.
Yeah. So I was like, whatever. And then we went back, and my father-in-law, he was at the game too. And he was like, yeah, those guys are a bunch of jerks. Like they deserve everything you guys were saying to them. And I was like, thank you. I really appreciate that. I felt like they did too. So anyway, and we ended up losing. So I mean, of course that doesn't help. So, and I think we have to face them at least one more time. So I'm going to try and be on my best behavior. We were not going into it thinking that it was going to be like that. We actually went into it thinking that, okay, we'll just, let it slide or whatever. But it was constant, man. It's every inning they were coming up and, hey, we need this. Hey, we need that, blah, blah, blah. And we were like, okay, this is enough. So,
did you guys have to shake their hands after?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, how was that?
Well, I was going to say something, but my wife talked me out of it. She was like, no, you better not. That's when we were talking about we're going to fight. And she was all, no, I can't fight. And I was like, my God, I talk all this and then I can't go up there and say anything. So anyway, but I'm glad, it wasn't worth it. And of course, too, I had my niece there who was supposed to spend the night that night.
Yeah.
So it almost ended up where I was going to have to explain to my sister, hey, got in a fight at softball. So luckily it didn't go there. But anyway, it was fun. I mean, it's good. It's good times. And I just, I don't like when, 40-year-olds are picking on 18-year-old kids who are just learning how to play. And it's obvious. It's obvious. So I was just getting frustrated, and of course I'm the older guy on the team, so I'm trying to back them up and trying to make sure that they know I have their back. And I was just like, man, this ain't it.
You're a good skip, man. You're a good skip. So
yeah, I would have been thrown out a long time ago. If it were MLB, man, I would have been thrown out early.
Well, I appreciate you obliging me with the story and telling the folks, because I was dying when you were telling me. So I just needed to hear. I needed everyone to hear what kind of shenanigans you get into on your free time. So
I know, can't do anything. Oh my God. Yeah. All right. Well, let's get into the actual sports talk of it, Cody. Let's start with the MLB because there's a lot of NFL, and that's gonna be majority of our show. So let's get right to that. And really, there's really no questions, and we're gonna talk about the whole. As we just before we got on, the story came out about Fernando Tatis being suspended for 80 games, but we are actually going to talk about that in the Drew Take questions. So I'm going to hold off on that. But let's do the top 5 power rankings. According to myself, of course, which I think is pretty accurate. Of course I do. Anyway, so it's actually changed a little bit. There's someone new in the top 5, and a few teams have kind of swapped a lot of places. So first and foremost, I still have the Dodgers number 1. I really don't think I need to explain this any more than they have the best record in baseball. They look like the best team in baseball right now. Since the craziest stat that I had seen was it was like 6 games after they traded for Joey Gallo, they went 6-0, and the Yankees were 0-5, which was like, holy cow, Joey Gallo wasn't hitting that on anything. And of course they make that stat to seem like, oh, it's all Joey Gallo. But I mean, Joey Gallo had a home run, I believe it was yesterday, for the Dodgers. I think it was his first home run as a Dodger. So, Dodger fans were happy about that. But I don't think I need to explain anything other than they keep winning and they're missing both of their top 2 pitchers. So, say what you will, but this is a freakishly good team. And even without good pitching, they can still win games. So that's scary. Then you have the Houston Astros. The Houston Astros have been on a freaking tear. And actually, right now, I just looked at the odds. Justin Verlander is the favorite to win the AL Cy Young. That's insane. This guy is he's 39, almost 40 years old, or he is 40. And he is just, absolutely killing it in Houston.
Didn't he just get back from Tommy John surgery last season?
Yeah. So he's been doing a real good job. The benefit that Justin Verlander has is first, he had a year off, so he's kind of healthy, but also he had a year off and a lot of like these newcomers haven't seen him. And the other thing is he's a veteran. He's a guy who's done it for a long period of time, so he knows what he can do and what he can't do. You're already ahead of the hitter when you know your limits. When the hitter comes up and knows your limits, yes, that's important, but at the same time, if you know your limits and you know what he's looking for that mistake pitch that is your, maybe your downfall. He's going to then know how to use it at the opportune moment. And that's what Justin Verlander has been doing all year long. And crazy that they asked. I mean, Jordan Alvarez has been crushing balls. Kyle Tucker, just to name a few. They traded for Trey Mancini, which I love the trade. I love Trey Mancini, even though the Orioles are in a push for the playoffs right now. But I love Trey Mancini. He's been one of my favorite ball players for a long time. I try and get him like every year in fantasy. So I'm glad he's on a team that has a chance to really possibly at least get in the World Series and possibly win it all. So then I have the New York Mets. Again, I don't think I need to explain this. The Mets kind of had a slump for a little bit, and the Astros have been on a tear, so that's why I have them over the Mets. But the Mets are getting healthy. They just got DeGrom back. They have Scherzer. They're getting Chris Bassett is starting to look good. Taijuan Walker has been kind of a surprise for me. Carlos Carrasco. I mean, their rotation is ridiculous. Their lineup is strong. A lot of guys who make a lot of contact, so they put the ball in play. And, as my old batting coach has told me for years, you put the ball in play, good things can happen. So, and that's what I've always, as a Giants fan, that's what I've always noticed. I have the Yankees at 4. They really dipped. And this is what I had predicted long ago. I felt like the Yankees were going to after the All-Star break. I felt like they were going to kind of slow down a little bit. I didn't know that they were going to slow down this fast, going 0 for 5 right away. Yeah, and they just lost today against the Yankees or against the Red Sox in a walk-off fashion with Tommy Pham of all players. So,
Mr. Fantasy,
yeah. So he might love our topics later.
Yeah,
I don't know. He might say that he wants his money back. I don't know. But anyway, so the Yankees. I mean, Aaron Judge is hitting home runs still. It's not like he's slowed down. It's the rest of the team that's slowed down. And I thought they got better. So this is a little bit of a concern. They're still very strong, still a good team, but that AL East is very tough, and the Blue Jays are starting to surge. The Orioles, I just mentioned, the Red Sox aren't completely out of it. Rays are still in it. So this is a tough AL East. You cannot slump for too long. So the Yankees are going to have to get it together. Still a strong team, though. And then I have the Atlanta Braves rounding it out. The Braves have been really good. They are starting to creep up again on the Mets. They're just slowly but surely making it. I still don't really love their bullpen. I still don't love their starting rotation. It's their lineup that I really do enjoy. I think their lineup is, peaches. Matt Olson actually is getting really hot lately. Ronald Acuna is doing Ronald Acuna things. He's not still who he was, but he is still, playing well. So there's a lot of good. Austin Riley has been phenomenal this year. Talk about a at least top 5, I would say top 3 NL MVP candidate right now.
Yeah.
So, the Braves would be the last in the top 5 here.
Right on. Actually, just curious, in the NL, which team do you think is a bigger threat to the Dodgers and preventing them getting to the World Series? You think it's the Mets, or do you think it is the Braves?
As much as I still have my questions about the Mets. Really the middle of their bullpen is kind of worrisome. I do like Diaz as their closer. I love their starting rotation, as I already said. So I would have to go with the Mets though. Like I said, the Braves, I'm not really fond of their bullpen. I'm not really gung-ho about their starting rotation. I think they have an okay starting rotation. They're guys that can do it, but it's not guys that I would actually, think that they're going to be able to do it, or believe it. You know what I mean? Like I would have to see it to believe in one of those types of things. So for me, the Mets are the scarier team in the NL. This is a strong team. I mean, as much as I would like to say if the Padres were playing a little bit better, I would probably still say the Padres, just because their rotation can be great, way better than at least the Braves. I mean, they could possibly rival the Mets when they're at their best, but the issue is they haven't been. And so for me, the Mets, they're the strongest team right now. They're the scariest team for me. I think they're a team that, you throw out DeGrom, he's not going to be scared of the Dodgers rotation. You throw out Scherzer, he's not going to be scared of the Dodgers rotation. You throw out Bassett, I mean, he's not going to be afraid, but he might give up a few runs. But the Mets have a team where they can score some runs. So this rotation is really built where they could beat the Dodgers. Do I think so? I don't think so. I think maybe in a three game series, in a wild card situation where you throw out DeGrom, Scherzer, 1-2, and Bassett. That's going to be tough. That would be tough. All you have to do is win 2. So DeGrom and Scherzer, that is a good possibility you can win that. So but if it's a 7-game series, I'm still going with the Dodgers.
No doubt. All right, run it by 1 through 5 one more time.
All right, 1, I have the Dodgers. The number 2 is the Astros. Number 3 is the Mets. Number 4 are the Yankees. And rounding it out with 5 is Braves.
Right on. All right, man. I think it's time for the good old fantasy football, since it's finally here. Preseason football was actually on today. Did you get to watch any of it?
No, because I don't care.
Oh, okay. So first off, did you see any highlights of Zach Wilson potentially tearing his ACL? Like he left his preseason game early?
I haven't seen it.
Okay.
I've been seeing on Twitter all the reporters saying they fear it's an ACL.
Yeah.
Robert Saleh coming out and saying they said that the ACL is still intact, but they're going to wait to see the MRI. So conflicting stories right now, but really we probably won't know for sure until tomorrow. But from what I see all over Twitter, and of course Twitter is not real news, so I'm not really going to I'm not going to be like, oh, he's totally done. But according to Twitter, it looked bad and it looked like he tore his ACL, but we'll see. Yeah, that's tough though. Every time I hear about someone's ACL, I'm like, oh, my knee.
I know, same. All of a sudden,
I feel it again.
I clench my left knee every time I hear that.
PTSD, man. Yeah, so hopefully not. You know what? As much as I'm not, thinking the Jets are going to do all that much, and we're going to talk about them later, I think they were still going to be somewhat competitive in most of their games because I don't think they have a terrible team.
Right.
I'm not sure about Zach Wilson, and then with him being out, I think it's just that much worse. So, unfortunately.
For sure. All right. Let's segue over to some fantasy football questions. I'll start from the bottom and we'll save the best for last, Drew. So who are your top 3 underrated fantasy football players this season?
Okay. So I'm going to start it with a receiver.
Okay.
And call me crazy. I don't care. I really don't. My first guy I would say is a top 3 underrated player for this year. Would be Russell Gage, going to the Buccaneers. He was on a very bad Falcons team. The Falcons then lost Calvin Ridley to the whole year, and the Falcons were left with Matt Ryan, a absolute crap of an offensive line, and somewhat of an okay running back, and then you had a couple of good receivers here and there, and Russell Gage kind of emerged as one of a go-to player. And he was putting up good fantasy numbers. I remember I picked him up in a couple of my fantasy leagues, and he was really consistent. Could I always rely on him to get those 20 burgers? Not all the time, but he was pretty consistent. And so if I needed to, spot start him in certain leagues or certain times, I would put him in there. So, but now he's going to a Buccaneers team, and I know what everyone's thinking. Well, hold on. He's going against Julio Jones. He's going against Mike Evans. He's going to go against whoever's going to be the tight end. Who I don't know who the number one tight end is going to be in Tampa Bay. It's always either OJ Howard or Braid or whoever else. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Russell Gage is going to emerge as the go-to guy because he is a slot receiver. Tom Brady is notorious for going to the slot receivers. He is a guy who has proven that on a bad team, he can be reliable. So when he's on a great team, he's going to be even that much more reliable. And then you have guys like Mike Evans, who everyone's always afraid of. I think Mike Evans is a little overrated in my opinion. I'm not going to go into it because it's not, what we're doing. But I think Mike Evans, Tom Brady doesn't necessarily trust him all that much. And, of course, Julio Jones coming in, he's going to probably trust Julio Jones, in my opinion, maybe a little more because Julio, when he is playing, he's one of the best receivers in the game. But unfortunately, he's just been riddled with injuries. Mike Evans, he hasn't been as dominant, in my opinion, as like a Julio Jones. So I feel like he's going to go Julio Jones. And even when he had Chris Godwin and Gronkowski, he really wasn't looking to Evans as much. My wife was when she was drafting in one of our leagues, she was like, "Oh, should I get Mike Evans?" And I was like, "I wouldn't." He'll have like 3 games where he's getting like 26 points, and you're like, "Oh my god, this is great." And then he's gonna have 5 games where he's getting maybe 5 points, and you're like, "What the heck?" And so he's to me is a lot of high and low. He's not really like consistent enough for me. And I think that's where Russell Gage is going to come in. He's going to be the consistent guy. He's going to be the go-to receiver when they're on a, 3rd and 5, it's going to be Russell Gage. When they're on a 3rd and 8, I feel like it's going to be more Russell Gage. The longer, the longer downs where it's like a 3rd and 10, 3rd and 15, something, then I think you're going to see more Evans or Julio Jones if Julio Jones can stay healthy. But even if he can, I still believe in Russell Gage. So to me, Russell Gage would be my first underrated player this season.
Gotcha. I think my first underrated player I would say is Matt Ryan. I don't know if that's really underrated, but I would say like if you're looking to, kind of wait out in the later rounds to get a quarterback, I think Matt Ryan is probably a really good choice. He didn't have the greatest season in Atlanta, but he still, had some fantasy upside slightly. But I think he's in a better situation, better offensive line. I think his weapons are a little younger, and they've been together for a while. And now that I think this is the 3rd season in the Frank Reich regime, I think these young receivers will have a pretty good connection with Matt Ryan, and also too that Indianapolis Colts defense will really help keep leads, and they won't let things get too out of control like Atlanta did, unfortunately. So I would actually say that Matt Ryan is a pretty solid quarterback choice, or at least to have as a backup, maybe a matchup starter type of sense. I would say that he would be my first underrated player.
All right. So my number 2 underrated player, I'm going to go with the running back in this one. This, to me, I kind of debated on whether I should put him just because he is on the Los Angeles Rams team, but I went with Cam Akers. And the reason I'm saying that is I feel like it is really misunderstood of how good he was really playing. He was still injured in the Super Bowl. Like he wasn't 100% healthy. I know the cliche, please spare me with this, with the whole everyone's hurt at the Super Bowl. Everyone's hurt at this time. Okay, well, this guy was going through a major injury, okay, is what I'm trying to get at. But the other thing is, Matthew Stafford with the whole elbow injury, it could be a Tommy John type situation that he has. We don't know. Like the Rams are kind of being semi-quiet about it. But I feel like with that, you're going to see a lot of Cam Akers with the Rams, at least early on in the season. Later in the season, depending on where they are, that's going to determine whether they're going to have to pass more or run more. But I do feel like Sean McVay really relies on his running backs early and then tries to let the quarterback kind of get into a groove going into the playoffs. But Cam Akers not only is a good running back, but he is a guy who can catch the ball out of the backfield, and he's good at it. And he can put up points that way as well. So for me, underrated, in my opinion. I don't feel like it's being talked about. We're talking about Allen Robinson. We're talking about Matthew Stafford. We're talking about, potentially OBJ, Cooper Kupp, of course.
Yeah.
Guys like that. We're not really bringing up Cam Akers, who was somewhat of a star in the Super Bowl. I know that could be controversy too, but he came up big in a lot of situations in the Super Bowl, and Cam Akers to me is an underrated player. So Cam Akers, my second underrated player.
Okay. Well, I'll stick on the same running back theme, and I'll actually go with our Las Vegas Raiders. And I'm going to say that I think an underrated player that people should probably stash is actually Zamir White. He got a lot of touches in preseason. He's gotten a lot of reviews out of Raiders camp. We got him in the 4th round out of Georgia, and he's a power runner. He's got a lot of speed, pretty good hands. And I'm also, and this is kind of like a foreshadowing to one of our Drew Take questions. I wouldn't be surprised if he takes over the second rotation in the running back, depth chart, or even be starter at some points, just because I think that Josh McDaniels and the Raiders really love Zamir White to the point to where, don't be surprised if he ends up being the starter. Josh Jacobs sometimes has health issues. He remained fairly healthy majority of last season, but he has missed some games for injury. Kenyan Drake is coming off of a pretty big injury, and so he will need some time to recover. But I think Zamir White is a player that people, think about stashing him. You never know. He'll probably have some pretty good games. And that Raiders O-line, even though it's a little bit banged up, that zone blocking scheme that they've instilled looked really good in the first preseason. And again, it's preseason, so we're going to taper expectations. But just the fact of that culture, that offense, it's on another level than what we're used to. And so I would say Zamir White is somebody to keep an eye on.
Yeah. Kudos to you, because Zamir White is going to be the James White, James White, obviously, who just retired, but Zamir White is going to be the James White in this offense, because Josh McDaniels, obviously coming from New England, he's going to want to keep that similar system because it has worked. And I think you could say that Josh Jacobs has gotten better at pass catching, but I think you'd rather have him run the football, because when he's running the football, he is just dangerous. Yeah. And that way you can throw in another guy who is a pass catcher. That is originally why they got Kenyan Drake. And to your credit, of course, he did get hurt late in the year, so we don't know when he's actually going to come back. I mean, it kind of seems like he may come back early in the year, but still, Zamir White is a really good rookie. He's a young guy. He's coming out of Georgia, who had like a four rotation running back system going. So obviously, I followed a lot of Georgia running backs this year, because one of the guys actually came from Buchanan High School, which is, right down the street from us here in Fresno. So, he's a local boy who's now, he's going to be like number 1, number 2 on the depth chart this year, which, watch some Georgia football. He's a good running back. Anyway, Kendall Milton, if you're interested. Anyway, so Zamir White is a guy who he's going to be the priority for him in this offense this year is going to be pass catching. So I think you're absolutely on to something there, but I would have to say temper expectations a little bit if you are going to stash him, because it would either, if he's going to get a few more run plays, Josh Jacobs is going to have to be hurt, or Kenyan Drake is going to have to be, out for a little while. So if not, then they're going to just kind of use Josh Jacobs a little bit more.
Gotcha. All right. Who's your third underrated player?
Third and final guy. I had to go with the quarterback situation, and I'm going to stick with the Raider theme. I'm going with Derek Carr.
He's underrated?
You think he is underrated, because exactly what Colin Cowherd had to say this year, or this week, was there's like being put as number 12, number 13. Not only did he beat the Chargers to go into the playoffs, and everyone talking about Justin Herbert, he's making all these incredible throws. Look at Herbert here. Look at Herbert there. Oh, if only they had a defense. Can we talk about Derek Carr in that game too? Give me a break, guys.
Yeah.
Derek Carr lost his best receiver and Henry Ruggs. Henry Ruggs was finally emerging as the guy that we thought he was going to be last year.
Mm-hmm.
He came out in this year and he was absolutely balling, and unfortunately got in trouble and probably won't see the light of day, unfortunately. But then they had to go with a hurt Darren Waller. Mm-hmm. All year long. He could not stay healthy. Then the offensive line was really beat up last year. Yeah. Josh Jacobs was beat up. Kenyan Drake went down. I mean, Hunter Renfrow was really the only receiver we had that was actually healthy. Zay Jones was a nice compliment to Renfrow and was making a few plays where you had to kind of keep him honest. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, Derek Carr had to find ways to win. And what did he do? He found ways to win. Yeah. Now you've upgraded him. You've gotten the best receiver in football in Davante Adams, the best slot receiver in football. Yes, I said that right. Hunter Renfrow, in my opinion, number 2, number 3 best tight end in the NFL in Darren Waller. And then the offensive line is looking like it could be beat up a little bit. But now you're adding, yes, Josh Jacobs, as you mentioned, Zamir White. When Kenyan Drake comes back, you're giving so many weapons. And in my opinion, I feel like we've gotten better on defense. I think a lot of people are underrating it because they're like, well, it's a lot of no-name guys. But Davante Adams, Darren Waller, Hunter Renfrow, all these guys who are seeing Nate Hobbs on the other side, they're praising this guy. They're like, this guy is phenomenal. He's going to be a problem in the league. And he was a problem last year. I mean, he came up a lot.
He's probably one of our best defenders.
Yeah. And so I think this defense is getting underrated. But anyway, Derek Carr, I think, yes, he is being underrated because a lot of people are like, oh, he only threw 23 touchdowns and 14 picks. It's not a great touchdown to interception ratio. Look at what he went through. Yeah. I mean, come on now. So when you talk about Derek Carr this year, I'm going to put it down now. I think this is going to be Derek Carr's first 30 touchdown year. And I don't think it's going to be even kind of close. I think he's going to have it by like week 15.
Mm-hmm. That's a good one. Derek Carr's our guy. So I'm actually surprised that you're categorizing him as underrated, but I think that's because us as being Raider fans, we see what he's done. And, everyone in the league recognizes him as a good player and as a good quarterback. And it's those that are on the outside that don't think they see it. But with all that he's gone through, I think Colin Cowherd pointed out best, in 8 years, he's gone through 6 OCs, 3 head coaches. It's some weird number. And yet he's mastered all the systems, and he still makes the Raiders competitive. So definitely something there. My third and final one, this is actually so these questions were kind of inspired by my cousin Nick. Drew, as you know, he's a fan of the show.
Shout out, Nick.
AKA Xbox Dad 559. He basically asked us to do some fantasy content, which is what I texted you about. So my third and underrated player, this is for you, Nick. Jerry Jeudy, I think, is a wide receiver people should think about drafting, with Russell Wilson now being their primary quarterback. Obviously, that's a huge upgrade, and the Broncos are going to be a threat in the AFC West, no doubt. They have a really good defense with a probably top 5 secondary in the NFL on paper. Not to mention they still have Bradley Chubb that is dangerous on the outside. And then you add a quarterback like Russell Wilson, who I think will elevate this offense, and they have a offensive-minded head coach. And I think Jerry Jeudy and Russell Wilson will find that chemistry pretty early. And, you and I, Drew, back in, I think it was the draft of 2020 or 2019, when Jerry Jeudy and Henry Ruggs were both drafted. You and I actually wanted Jerry Jeudy over Ruggs at the time because we liked his route tree a lot more. We liked his speed. Even though Ruggs was faster, we still felt like, with the hands, the routes that Jerry Jeudy is able to do, we thought that was a better result than Henry Ruggs. I still think that Jerry Jeudy is going to be a pretty big wide receiving star once he finds a quarterback that can get him the ball, because his last 2 quarterbacks were Drew Lock and Teddy Bridgewater. So it's not those quarterbacks aren't the greatest to help develop a young receiver that needs a good quarterback to be throwing him the ball. So I think that Jerry Jeudy is going to have a pretty good year coming up, and I think he's a breakout player, and I think he's underrated in this sense because people are probably looking at Jerry Jeudy thinking that he's a potential bust, but I don't think people are thinking about the quarterbacks that he's had. He's getting a new offense that's more tailored towards, receiver friendly as it came from the Packers organization. So I think Jerry Jeudy is an underrated player, and he's my third one in this topic.
All right, Cody, all potent stuff, man. All right, so let's go into our do not draft top 3 list here. Don't draft him. Don't let someone else make the mistake, okay? And Cody, I was telling you as we were messaging on our Marco Polo this week, I always do this in my head when I'm at a draft. Any draft I'm at, I always have usually I have 10 guys, to be honest. Yeah. But I have these guys in my head where okay, I'm not going to get them. If they drop in 4 rounds and they're still there, then I'll think about getting them. But, I usually have a list in my head of guys I'm not going to even mess with because I've either been burned by them before, I see them consistently dropping, but yet the media is talking about how good they are still or whatever. So those are guys that I definitely try and avoid. So this is one of those topics that I really, really like doing. So Cody, I'm going to let you kick it off here. Who is your first do not draft player?
First do not draft player for me. It's actually my favorite quarterback because I said he was top 10 years ago, Ryan Tannehill. As I mentioned when we did our, I think it was our AFC South predictions, I think.
I hate you.
I said that the Ryan Tannehill experiment was over. I believe that's true. I think he's going to have a lackluster season. He doesn't have the offensive weapons he had last season. Yes, they have Robert Woods, and I can't even remember the receiver that they drafted. I think they drafted him in the early rounds. But regardless, though, I think that Ryan Tannehill is going to have a struggle. It's going to be a pressure type season for him. And I do see Malik Willis being placed in the starting lineup because I think what will end up happening is the Titans are going to get to a point where they're out of playoff contention, out of wild card contention. Because in my opinion, if the Titans don't finish with 11 to 12 wins, they're not getting into the playoffs because I think the Colts are better than them, and I think every other team in the AFC, specifically out of the West, will probably have a better record than the Titans. So the Titans, I don't see them getting a wild card. And I think what will end up happening is at some point in the season, maybe it's a little bit past halfway, maybe, I don't know, after Thanksgiving, I see the Titans making a quarterback change because they're out of contention and they want to get Willis the experience, the starting reps, and go from there. So I would say if you are somebody that is a Ryan Tannehill fan, don't draft Ryan Tannehill. Avoid him. Let somebody else take him. I don't think he's the quarterback that you guys want to go for this upcoming fantasy season.
Okay, so I will. I'll stick with the theme of the quarterbacks. I am going to go. My overrated or do not draft list is going to go with Dak Prescott. I'm over Dak. Okay, I'm over him. Listen, I like him as a dude. I think he's a really solid quarterback. Listen, no one thought he was going to be what he ended up being. Not saying he's a terrible quarterback. Not saying that at all. But I think he is a little overhyped. I don't think he does what everyone says that he's doing. Is he a great leader? He's absolutely a great leader. He is a guy that you want on your team. But you are not going to be successful when you lose your best receiver last year. Amari Cooper was their best receiver. I mean, what? He had 8 touchdowns? What are you going to replace that with 8 touchdowns? You just lost what? Who was it? James Washington? He was supposed to replace that 8 touchdowns. I mean, maybe he could have, but I mean, he's not going to be as effective as what Amari Cooper was. And Cooper was out earlier in the year. So I just want to say that Dak Prescott, as much as I like him as a guy, I don't think he is a fantasy option. I think he, at best, is going to be a backup quarterback for you in fantasy football. Listen, Ezekiel Elliott has gone way downhill. Tony Pollard has been playing better than Elliott. But now that offensive line is getting worse, and now you've lost, like I said, Amari Cooper. You're really relying heavily on CeeDee Lamb and Dalton Schultz. And I like CeeDee Lamb. I'm not saying he's terrible. And I'm not saying that the Cowboys aren't going to win games. We already did the NFC East. But I will say this, Dak Prescott, he's going to be under pressure a lot more. And from what I have witnessed and what I have watched on film, he is not a guy who likes the pressure. You can say that about every quarterback. I get it. But listen, there are guys who don't like pressure but can still make throws. And Dak Prescott, to me, is not really one of those guys. He is a guy who would rather just throw it away, which is usually good. But when you need a first down on third down, he is a guy who just kind of gives up on a play, unfortunately. And now he tries to run a lot still. And it's like, dude, you've been hurt before. You can't really do it as much. And it's unfortunate to see because I think he's a really good guy. He's a great leader, like I said. So Dak Prescott, for me, do not draft this year.
Man, I was shocked when you said it, but your points are pretty interesting and pretty valid. It's hard to argue against it because I think it was can't remember if it was last season or 2 seasons ago. I actually did draft Dak, and it kind of screwed me over. So yeah, I kind of feel that sentiment now.
Yeah.
So my second player to avoid. Now, this player had a breakout season, respectfully, last season with a really terrible team in the Atlanta Falcons. And I'm talking about Cordell Patterson. I don't think he's going to duplicate the same fantasy production, the same target share, anything like that in this upcoming season. I think with a change in quarterback, obviously change in the offense, I don't see him being the feature player or like the Deebo Samuel type player. He is getting a little bit older. I see injuries kind of maybe derailing that. He's a fine player. I mean, he was a Raider once before as a return specialist, and he was great. He even had a couple of great touchdowns when Derek Carr was throwing him the ball. But I don't see him carrying that same production as last season, because last season he carried a lot of folks to the championship, and I just don't see that happening again. So I'm going to say Cordell Patterson is a player you guys are going to want to avoid this season.
So is that your receiver or is that your running back? I'm trying to stick with the theme
here. He's the flex option.
Oh man, that's not helping me, Cody. So I'm actually going to go with, and you know what? I'm kind of surprised that I'm saying this, but I feel like it is because of who his quarterback is. I'm going to go with Deontay Johnson. I'm not going to draft him this year. You have Mitchell Trubisky. You have his younger version in himself. And what's his name? The guy who was just drafted from Pittsburgh.
Kenny Pickett.
Kenny Pickett. I have no, and then, or Mason Rudolph. Listen, I think Deontay Johnson is a good player. I'm not saying that it's one of those things where I'm not saying he's a terrible player, but I do think he benefited from listen, I was a little bit higher on Ben Roethlisberger than he ended up being. I think you were a lot lower on Ben Roethlisberger than what he ended up being. I think, he kind of ended up in the middle of what we thought, but say what you will about Ben Roethlisberger. Yeah, he really didn't have an arm anymore, and he was kind of breaking down as a player. But overall, he's still a smart quarterback. He knows where to throw the football. With Mitchell Trubisky, I think he's good. I think he's fine. But what we saw with Trubisky in Chicago was if he doesn't really have his go-to guy, or really doesn't have, a great offensive line, he's not going to be very great. I mean, he's not what you need. He's an okay starter. He can get you through a year if you need him. He can be that bridge quarterback, which is what I think they're going to be doing. And I think with that, Deontay Johnson is not going to be fantastic. I mean, his first year with Pittsburgh, he wasn't, he didn't really get too much. He was still targeted quite often. He was targeted 92 times in his rookie year in 2019. And then in 2020, played 15 games, 88 catches, 144 targets, 923 yards, 7 TDs. And then last year with a Ben Roethlisberger who not great, had 107 receptions, 169 targets, 1,161 yards, and 8 touchdowns. And that is, like I said, with a breaking down Ben Roethlisberger. So you're going from Ben Roethlisberger, who, say what you will, he's one of the smarter quarterbacks in the NFL, and now he's gone. And now you're going to Mitchell Trubisky, who was a backup last year in Buffalo. I mean, I don't know. I'm going to stay away from Deontay Johnson. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, and I'll live with it. But to be perfectly honest, I feel like I'm on the right side on this one. I really don't like Deontay Johnson this year. I'm going to stay away from him in all leagues.
All right. So before I get to my third player to avoid, we actually have a question regarding a fantasy trade. So I'm going to put it up for you, Drew. So this one asked if he accepts a trade for Ezekiel, Robert Woods, and Alvin Kamara, should he accept it?
No, I would not. Because Elliott and the Cowboys have already proven that they don't trust Elliott. They're putting out good PR with him. They're saying, "Oh, he looks great. He looks like he's super healthy now. He's been running really good." Listen, that's all fluff. Because when they need to trade him, they will do it in a heartbeat. I don't think they're going to be able to be honest. But they're going to want to probably play a lot more of Tony Pollard. Robert Woods is on Tennessee now, who you just said Ryan Tannehill. You don't really think he's going to do great. Maybe Malik Willis will come in and do something good, but it may be too little too late type of a thing. And Robert Woods has kind of started to get hurt a little bit more, and that's what I'm a little worried about. Now, Alvin Kamara has had his issues in the offseason, but what we know is he's the back.
Yeah,
they might throw in Ingram a couple of times, but Kamara is their guy. And now you've added, you got Michael Thomas back. You added Jarvis Landry, Chris Olave in the draft. So they got a lot of weapons, and that is going to open a lot of that field to Alvin Kamara. So I would keep Kamara, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'd agree with that too. All right, so the third player that I would recommend that you avoid drafting, this is actually continuing with receiver. And ironically, I also wrote down Deontay Johnson as one of mine too, but I'm not going to, I'm not going to use him. This receiver I think that everyone should avoid, at least in this season, is DK Metcalf of the Seattle Seahawks. The reason why is simply their quarterback play, their offensive line. It is atrocious. I would not sacrifice a draft pick on DK Metcalf or on Tyler Lockett, but specifically DK Metcalf. He's a young receiver. He will probably show some flashes, and he will get some stats. I'm not going to say that he'll never catch a pass or anything, but if you're going to spend a third or a fourth round pick, maybe even a fifth round pick at the latest to get DK Metcalf, save that, get a different receiver. If Allen Robinson is still hanging out there, I would choose Allen Robinson over DK Metcalf. I think that's a way better value for your pick, but I would avoid DK Metcalf. Who's throwing him the ball? Either Drew Lock, who had a pretty good receiving core in Denver, in Sutton, Patrick, even Judy in his rookie season, couldn't do nothing with them. Geno Smith has been in the league for numerous amounts of years, and he has not panned out. I think he's just been in Seattle because he's another mobile quarterback. He's been in Pete Carroll's offense for a long time, but even when he filled in for Russ during Wilson's injury, he wasn't very effective as a passer. He wasn't fantasy relevant. I think he finished a couple of games in the negative. So I would avoid DK Metcalf. He's not going to be worth a late round draft pick. If he goes undrafted or he's on the waiver, take a flyer if you want to week, but I'm not wasting a draft pick on him with the situation that's going on in Seattle. So that would be my third player to avoid in this draft.
Are you kidding me? Drew Lock is the truth, buddy.
Right.
No, I'm just kidding.
Okay.
Drew, yeah. Yeah, exactly. I just need some gum. Anyway, no, I agree with you. Last year I was kind of off of DK because he's kind of that big game play, and if he doesn't get that, 70-yard touchdown or whatever, he's got great speed. Yeah, he's kind of, his hands haven't been great. I think he did really benefit from Russell Wilson though, and I got to shout out Backseat Podcast because they've been kind of trashing Russell Wilson. They're putting him at like 11, which I think is absolutely insane. I mean, say what you will, but Russell Wilson is a winner. I mean, this guy. Look at what we're saying about the Seahawks when Russell Wilson left. They went from like a 7-9, 7-10 team to like everyone's like maybe 3 wins. Are you kidding me? So Russell Wilson, come on, let's give him a little bit of respect. I mean, he's borderline top 5, if not in your top 5. I don't see how not. But anyway, neither here nor there. I would agree with you on that. My third and final guy is actually. I think this might surprise a lot. JCJ, I appreciate your question, by the way. I hope we gave you valid information, and I hope it doesn't screw you. Watch, Kamara's gonna get hurt, and he's gonna be like, "God dang it!"
No kidding. He's got to remember this.
Anyway, I'm gonna go with Saquon Barkley. I'm not touching him with a 10-foot pole because I don't trust him anymore. His rookie year, he was phenomenal. Over 1,300 rushing yards, 11 touchdowns. What did he do in the following year? He got hurt, missed 3 of those games, barely got to 1,000 yards. He was 3 yards over 1,000 yards, and he only had 6 touchdowns. And then in the average is what was worrisome to me. Mm-hmm. He went from a 5.0 average in his rookie year to a 4.6, which is still good. I mean, I'm not saying that's trash, but you got to put it in perspective of he had a lot fewer attempts, and he was injured for 3 of those games, and a lot of those games towards the end really didn't matter in the Giants. Then you talk about 2020 year, which was, listen, it was only 2 games. He had 19 attempts, but his average was 1.8. Yes, he got injured, but he was not injured before those numbers came up. So what I'm saying here, and he had no touchdowns in those 2 games. Now, he got hurt, obviously, I think it was early in the second game, but it was a little worrisome already. Then last year, he came back off of injury, still got injured again, missed 4 games there, and only had 593 rushing yards. His average was a 3.7, which is still okay, but he only had 162 attempts and 2 touchdowns. He was not who he had been. So, in my opinion, Saquon Barkley, I'm not trusting him. He's not a great pass catcher either. He doesn't put up big numbers. His first year, again, he did. His first year, he caught 91 catches. His second year, he only caught 52, and he only missed 3 games. That's almost 40 passes. That's 39 passes that you all of a sudden just lost in 3 games.
Yeah. That's
a huge number. And then last year, he only had 41 catches. And granted, yes, I understand, it's Daniel Jones. How can you? Okay, but that's my point. We're talking about this year. If Daniel Jones is your quarterback, I'm not touching Saquon Barkley, and to be honest, that offensive line isn't really making me, lick my lips here. It's mediocre at best right now, and I just don't think Barkley has what he had before his injury.
I mean, no doubt, it's hard to argue with that. I mean, a lot. He has the most promise, I think, but he has the biggest question mark with the team, quarterback line, just as you mentioned. So I can't disagree with that, man. All right, I got one last one before we go to break, Drew. So if you in your fantasy league had the number 1 pick, who are you picking out of Johnathan Taylor, Cooper Kupp, Christian McCaffrey, or are you picking somebody else with the number 1 pick?
Let me preface it by this. I would still think Christian McCaffrey, possibly. I would still look at him. But if I'm looking at the other players and then literally anyone else, I think if you're the number 1 pick, you got to go with someone who you can rely on. Last year, I had a number 1 pick in one league. I don't even remember which league it was. And I drafted Christian McCaffrey, and he was phenomenal until he got hurt. So, I mean, it was worth it until then. So you got to go with, I think this year I would go with someone who's more reliable, and I think someone who's going to really benefit with a new addition. I'm going to go with Johnathan Taylor. Johnathan Taylor not only has one of the best offensive lines in the game right now, they just got Matt Ryan, who I think is a complete upgrade over Phillip Rivers, who I've never been high on. I don't think Phillip Rivers was a good quarterback. I don't think he was a great quarterback. And he was at the down trajectory of his career when he came to Indianapolis. And then last year you had Carson Wentz, who completely fell apart against the Raiders and Jaguars, which was really weird, but we appreciate it, Wentz. And so now you have Matt Ryan, who, Matt Ryan, say what you will. I mean, there are going to be people who don't like Matt Ryan as much as Phillip Rivers, and I'm not here to debate that. That's fine. I like Matt Ryan a lot. I would, if I had to pick Matt Ryan in his prime and Phillip Rivers in his prime, I would pick Matt Ryan. And I think Matt Ryan really suffered last year with a really terrible offensive line. And we don't talk about this enough. The Atlanta Falcons were kind of starting to win in late last year. Was it too little too late? Yes, it was. But at the same time, they were kind of making a push. So for me, I am definitely going to go with Johnathan Taylor, who's not only benefiting from a great offensive line, but is going to be benefiting from a smart, veteran, good quarterback. I really like Johnathan Taylor. So if my first pick, I'm going Johnathan Taylor.
I can respect it. I think I'm going to go a little bit outside the box just because this fantasy season has some different energy about it. So I would say I would take a flyer and I would take the risk and I would go Cooper Kupp just because of how we saw Matthew Stafford's connection with him, the Rams offense. Obviously Cooper Kupp has been in Sean McVay's offense, I think his entire career, if I'm not mistaken. And I mean, the type of production Cooper Kupp had was definitely never to be seen from a wide receiver. But I think too, is what, even if he had a down season, supposedly, that is still probably number one or at least top 5 receiving production, which, you need at least a top 5, maybe even a top 3 receiver or running back to really have a good team. And I think if you take a chance on Cooper Kupp, especially with PPR style leagues, which is, I think, what everyone kind of does now, with the amount of receptions and yards and touchdowns that Cooper Kupp can get, basically just on any team in the NFC West, let alone the entire league, I think right then and there, I think you can take a chance on Cooper Kupp and it would probably serve you well just because of the amount of production you can probably get in Sean McVay's offense.
Absolutely, man. I don't hate it. I'm just a little worried about Matthew Stafford's elbow. That's the only reason I wouldn't go first pick, but I can respect it. I mean, Cooper Kupp, some people are saying he's the best receiver in the league right now, and I'm not going to debate it right now, but I would just be a little worried about Stafford. That's why I went with Taylor. He's a little more of a sure thing as of right now.
Yeah,
my
opinion.
For sure. So, all right, let's take that break, sir.
All right, let's do it. We'll be right back, you guys.
Man, we are back. I was just watching the Giants game, and Evan Longoria scored from first. Oh my God, that is shocking. Anyway, he's usually really, really slow. Good one. Hey, we're beating the Pirates. Yeah.
All right.
Anyway, we should beat them. Anyway, let's talk football, Cody.
Let's do it.
So we have been doing our NFL predictions. And we are now on to the AFC East. This is going to be insane. I think you're gonna disagree with me on a couple of these. I believe, but we'll see. This is gonna be Enticing, sir. So, what we've been doing is we tell you who our 4-team, 3-team, 2-team, and then we go to our number 1 team and their records and why. So, Cody, why don't you kick it off? AFC East, who is the 4th place team in the AFC East and why?
So the 4th place team I have in the AFC East, if you're in the Boston and New England area, you're not going to like this, but I have the New England Patriots finishing in 4th place at 5-12. They don't even have a offensive coordinator that they could name without sounding very coy or very shady-like, which is kind of ironic to say about Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots. But, their defense is very good. Their offense, I think, has taken a step back. Obviously, you have Mac Jones. There's rumors that they're looking to shop Damian Harris, who had, I thought, a breakout season last year, and they're already looking to shop him, which is kind of surprising. You lose a coordinator, like, in my opinion, like a Josh McDaniels, and I think, you're not going to improve, to say the least. You're probably hoping to just maintain, but I think bringing in Matt Patricia and Joe Judge to kind of be offensive consultants, not the greatest of moves. So I think Bill Belichick is just basically trying to get a high draft pick before he bounces, and I see the New England Patriots being a 5-12 team.
Okay, well, I disagree with that, but man, oh man, that kind of shocked me. I'm sorry, I'm a little taken back by it, but I'm going to go with the safe bet. I'm going to go with the New York Jets at number 4. Okay. I have them at 3-14. Listen, I actually 14? Yes, I do. I don't think they're all that bad, but especially with Zach Wilson, we don't know what his injury is going to be, like I said. And then I also really don't. I'm not too keen on this defense as much as everyone's talking about it. Like, I don't know. I think their defensive line is okay. I think their linebacking core is okay. They get injured quite a bit. Their secondary is kind of sus, and then their offensive line is not good. Their running back situation again is, I don't know. I don't really like the running backs. They lost Jamison Crowder. Yes, they got Garrett Wilson in the draft, who I really do like. But honestly, I think this Jets team with Robert Saleh as the head coach, I think he's way over his head in head coaching. I just don't think he really understood what it entailed. And so, I just am a little worried about the Jets overall being staying close knit as a team. And like I said, especially the Zach Wilson thing, it's going to be a little worry. But I do think they have kind of a rough schedule. I mean, say what you will about the AFC East, I do think it is fairly tough. I don't think New England is going to be that bad, but I do think that they're going to be able to at least hold their own. I mean, at least knowing Bill Belichick and his teams, they're going to have a solid defense. I really like the Dolphins. I think they're going to be really good. And then you have Buffalo Bills, who, are a lot of people's favorites to get into the Super Bowl. So they face all those teams twice. So that's already half of your season, basically. But they face teams like, Green Bay. You really like Detroit. I think Detroit is going to be a tough one. Minnesota, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Baltimore. Those are some tough teams. And then they do see like Denver and Seattle, so we'll see how those go. But I'm just not really sure about the Jets, and I think with Robert Saleh, like I said, I just think he's way over his head in the head coaching situation. So Jets are my number 4 team. So Cody, who is your number 3 team and why?
So my number 3 team is the New York Jets. I actually have them finishing at a 7-10 record. I actually think that if Zach Wilson isn't seriously injured to the point of missing the entire season, so this is contingent on assuming Zach Wilson is healthy. So this is a big if. But if Zach Wilson is healthy, I think that this team could potentially get to 7-10. I don't think they're getting in the playoffs. I don't think they'll get to 500. I do think that Robert Saleh is basically coaching for the last season, unless they make the playoffs. This is probably it. But, I do think that Zach Wilson, Elijah Moore, they've got some pretty good young pieces in there. They did have to sign Dwayne Brown because they did lost, I think his name is Belchnik. I can't remember. I can't pronounce his name clearly. So
Mekhi Becton.
Becton? There it is. Excuse me, guys.
Oh,
anyways.
Belch? Where did
Belch?
Belch come from?
Sorry. Oh, my gosh. Anyways, guys.
Holy God.
Anyways, so, obviously the offensive line is going to be under construction for a while. And I do think, though, that this Jets team is going to surprise some people. Do I think they're a playoff team? Not yet. But, it is going to be contingent on Zach Wilson not being hurt. And also, too, I had to give them a pretty good record considering Zach Wilson's offseason. He had an elite offseason. So I have to reward it somehow.
Yeah, I'm not very high on Zach Wilson. I know we still haven't seen everything, and I know the offseason, he's a player, whatever. But I actually think that's a downgrade, in my opinion. You couldn't get girls your age. You had to go a little bit older. I don't know. It's a little weird for me. But anyway, I just, talking about football-wise, I'm not really sold on Zach Wilson, so that's why I have them so low as well. Even if he is healthy, that's why I have him at. So for my number 3 team is going to be the New England Patriots. I'm a lot higher on them. Whether or not you think Bill Belichick is just completely trying to tank, which all signs are starting to point to yes. I do feel, however, the Patriots were a playoff team. Now, are they the same team that they were last year? No. I think they are going to take a step back. But last year they went 10-7. In my opinion, this year they're going to go 8-9. And the reason I think is because New England always puts out a good defense. Whether it's these high names or these no names, they still always have a solid defense. And his son has actually kind of proven that he can kind of take the reins when it comes to the defensive coordinating position. Now, the offense, yes, that is a little worrisome that we have 2 defensive coordinators, one defensive coordinator
plays.
and special teams guy calling offensive plays. I understand, they scheme and he's trying to be the first person to whatever, blah, blah, blah. We all know it's not going to work. Maybe I bet you I would like to bet a lot of money on the first game of the New England Patriots. They're going to come out firing on all cylinders, and everyone's going to be like, it worked. The offensive coordinators who were former defensive coordinators are great at this. Are we kidding? Mac Jones is going to be MVP, and then week 2 it's going to be a complete flop. So I would bet a lot of money on those, in my opinion. But anyway, not saying anyone should, just saying me personally, that's what I would do. And I would have to live with consequences. But anyway, the New England Patriots, I do think they have somewhat of a favorable schedule. I'm not very high on Minnesota. A lot of people are high on Minnesota, so we'll see about that. I think that is kind of a coin flip, in my opinion, because I do feel like every time Kirk Cousins faces New England just completely figures out Kirk Cousins, which not always hard to do, but usually shuts him down, and he struggles against New England all the time. So, Pittsburgh, I'm not very high on them this year. Cleveland, I think is, it's starting to look like it's not going to be a Deshaun Watson type of year.
Thank God.
Yeah. But, they face teams like the Colts, obviously Buffalo twice, the Raiders, the Cardinals. So I do think they're going to run into a few buzzsaws here and there, and they're going to lose a lot more games than I think they're going to win, obviously, with an 8-9 record. But I do think the Patriots are not going to be as abysmal as everyone is saying. I do still trust Bill Belichick in some sense, but I don't think I don't think they're going to be a playoff team.
Okay.
All right, Cody, who's your number 2 team and why?
Number 2 team for me, I think, is a pretty obvious choice. It's the Miami Dolphins. I have them finishing with a 10-7 record. I think that this team will be pretty good offensively. And JCJ, shout out to you. He's been commenting on our live stream the whole time. He says that he thinks that they're going to be really good as well. And I mean, I agree. I don't think that they are going to be, like on the same level as, let's say, like, the Chiefs or the Bills or anything like that. I think that they still got a lot of growing pains to go through. I think a huge obstacle they have to go through is Tua as a quarterback. I mean, he shows flashes, but then there's been times where, he's also shown some signs of being a little impatient. He doesn't really go through his progressions very well. He's also injury prone. He's a little smaller. So, those are just some concerns. And he's also learning a new offensive system. And, hopefully this is better for him. They do have, burners on the outside with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, so hopefully, this offense is probably going to carry the defense more or less, and they're going to get into a lot of shootouts. But I just think that this team with their inexperience is probably also going to lose some games that they probably shouldn't lose. But, I think that's just how it's going to go for this season for them. But I do have them finishing 10-7. I have them looking on the outside in terms of the playoffs, though they're not one of my wild card teams. But I think Miami's going to surprise a lot of people. But I think that they're going to also have, a successful season in terms of wins to losses. But, I don't see them as a Super Bowl contender, nor do I see them as a playoff team just yet.
I also have the Miami Dolphins at number 2. I actually have them at 12-5. I really like the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, sounds like
First of all, I'm not as high on Tua as I was when he was coming out of the draft. I will admit that, but I do still think he's a accurate quarterback. And what I've noticed in the NFL is if you're an accurate quarterback, you're going to be given a lot of chances. Not only that, but you could actually potentially really do something good in the NFL. And for me, I think Tua is still an accurate quarterback. I don't love the offensive line that much. I do think they, have a lot of room for improvement. But you got a receiver in Jalen Waddle. You have Tyreek Hill. They picked up Cedric Wilson. Mohamed Sanu, who's on their team, which I still think he's going to see some playing time. So some really good receivers just right off the bat. They picked up Alec Ingold, who's a former Raider, who I think was very underrated in what he did for the Raiders for the years that he was there. Ingold is a good blocking fullback. So he is a guy who is going to pave way for really good running backs, Chase Edmonds and Raheem Mostert. Now, both guys who have had injury history, but then you have guys like Myles Gaskin behind them and Sony Michel. This is a really good running back core that I don't think is being talked about enough. We're talking about the Tyreek Hill and Tua connection. We're talking about, Jalen Waddle and Tua, as we should. But I think that running back core, that really surprised me looking at all that. That is dangerous. All 4 of those guys are guys who not only can run the football well, but who can catch the ball out of the backfield very well as well, as I keep saying that. Mm-hmm. So I really, really like that offense. But not only that, Xavier Howard is a phenomenal corner. He needs to be talked about way more. And then I actually really like their defensive line. Christian Wilkins is, but Emmanuel Ogba, I really like. I think he's very underrated. And they have a decent linebacking core, pretty young guys though. But I like their Brandon Jones, Javon Holland, and then Xavier Howard as the corner. I mean, a really solid secondary. This defense is not a defense that I would sleep on. So for me, I really like the Miami Dolphins. And again, I think they're going to kind of benefit a lot from first being in the AFC East. Only, seeing New England Patriots and the New York Jets, I think is going to be more in favor of the Dolphins. But I do think that the Dolphins will lose one to New England just because it seems like that's what happens every year. But, they face teams like Detroit, even though I do think Detroit is be solid. At the same time, I do think Miami is that much better. I think they'll beat Green Bay, Chicago, Minnesota, Cincinnati. That one can go up in the air. Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Houston, and then they face like San Francisco. That one could be a toss-up as well. But for me, I really like this Miami Dolphins team a lot, and I just think they're
not only is their schedule kind of favorable for them for the team that they have, but I do also believe that they are that good.
So run me by that record one more time.
12-5.
12-5. Okay. Pretty high. I was surprised that you went there, but you know what? I could see it too. I mean, they're going to probably surprise a lot of people, as I mentioned. I think I'm a little more conservative on them just because of the pieces in on Tua. But if they can overcome a lot of the adversity, then yeah, they could very easily be a team to be reckoned with in the East. My number one team, obviously, is going to be the Buffalo Bills at 13-4. Obviously, I have them in the playoffs for the AFC. I see this team having a very tough schedule to lead just in the first 7 weeks of the season. I do think, though, that they will win out some very close and very competitive games, and I think it'll battle test them. And then I think that they're going to have a pretty good win streak following their bye week all the way leading into, I want to say it's the Christmas time, where I think that they will probably suffer a loss, but I think they're going to end the season very, very well. Josh Allen is probably going to have an MVP type season. In my opinion, this year's MVP is basically going to either be handed to Josh Allen or Justin Herbert, which is kind of how everything's been playing out and just their trajectory of how good that they both are. But Buffalo Bills, though, they have still Stephon Diggs. They have an elite defense. They're only going to get better. I think the only thing is just in question is their running game. It's not very good. If it runs through Josh Allen, it's a little worrisome just because he runs the risk of getting injured, even though he's a bigger quarterback. But their run game is just the only thing I would worry about. If they get that thing situated, they're probably the team to beat in the AFC. And I would say above Kansas City, just because now they're a multi-threat type of a team where they can run on you, they can throw on you, they have a defense to back it up. Their special teams is a little underrated, but they're a solid team from top to bottom, and I don't even know if they've hit their ceiling yet, which is scary to think about. And they're still just adding great talent, and they've got a great culture over there in Buffalo. And so I just see that this team is running away with the East. But I wouldn't be surprised if this is the Super Bowl favorites on most people's list coming out of the AFC.
Yeah, I also have Buffalo Bills at 13-4. Not much to really add on other than, I think they'll lose the game against the Rams, in my opinion. I just think in SoFi Stadium, off of the Super Bowl win, there's going to be a lot of excitement. I'll just, I'll go ahead and say I think the Rams will win that game. Wouldn't be surprised if the Bills pulled it out, but that would just be my prediction. But, they face teams like the Tennessee Titans. Then it's honestly, the toughest stretch, in my opinion, is the at Miami and then at Baltimore. I could easily see them starting like 1-3, possibly. Do I think it'll happen? Probably not. I mean, I really think that they could overcome that. They do have to go to Kansas City, which I think is actually more favorable for Buffalo now. But they got to face like Green Bay, who, say what you will, I still think Green Bay is not as great as what they were last year. They see the Jets twice. I'm not very high on the Vikings, like I've said. Browns, Lions. So, they see the Bears and Bengals as well. So I do feel like there's a lot of games that I could see them possibly losing. Mm-hmm. Not a lot of games. That sounds bad. That sounds like I feel like they're going to miss the playoffs. I don't think that. I just think there's a few games I could see them maybe losing a few more, but I do feel like in terms as a strong team, the Bills are that team. And I think they really don't have anything to prove other than when they get to the playoffs, which I think they will for sure. Yeah. We don't know exactly how, but the way I see the way I see their schedule, I think it's pretty favorable. In the beginning, it's pretty rough. Like I said, I could possibly see them going 1-3, but after that, they'd get out of that, and I think they would kind of coast until they probably, I would say, maybe the Vikings game, which is in week 10. I could see that possibly being a loss if the Vikings are what everyone else is saying, but I don't believe it. And then maybe the Bengals, I could see them lose too. So But I like the Bills.
What record do you have them finishing at?
13-4.
Right on. All right. So just to recap. So at number 4, I got New England finishing in 4th place at 5-12. New York Jets finishing in 3rd place at 7-10. Miami Dolphins finishing 10-7 in 2nd place, and Buffalo Bills finishing 13-4 to get 1st place in the AFC East. Drew, recap.
Number 4, I have the New York Jets at 3-14. Number 3, I have New England Patriots at 8-9. I have number 2, Miami Dolphins at 12-5, and number 1, I have the Buffalo Bills at 13-4.
Right on. All right, Drew, before we get to Drew takes, we actually had a question in the comments still about fantasy football, so we're just going to kind of shift over there real quick, and it is from JCJ again. He asked if his team consisted of quarterback being Tua, Christian McCaffrey as an RB, Alvin Kamara, RB2, Deebo Samuel, T. Higgins as the receivers, Irv Smith as the tight end, and Antonio Gibson as the flex. What do you think of this starting lineup?
First, my question is, JC, what the heck kind of league are you in? How you got Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara, and Deebo Samuel and T. Higgins? Like what? And an Antonio Gibson. My God, man, what are you in a 6-team league? I mean, good Lord. You'll be fine.
Yeah,
you'll be fine.
I'll be surprised if you lose a game with this roster.
I mean, the Irving Smith Jr. Probably not 10-man. Good God, where was everyone else blind? My God. Anyway, sorry. I'm amazed that you got those.
Yeah, no kidding. I guess everyone was sleeping except for you, man. Great job on on paying attention, man. Good.
Yeah, for real. I think the only thing is Deebo. He could possibly get injured, and he got his money, so that's a little worrisome for me. But Irv Smith Jr., I think that could be really good, or kind of mediocre. You might have to spot start a few different tight ends. So I would definitely look at that. And then Tua, I think you're going to have a lot of games where he's going to look really good, but I think you're going to have a few games where you're going to kind of be like, okay, should I keep Tua? Like he might get you like 11 points. So just be wary of that. So make sure you have somewhat of a decent backup quarterback, in my opinion. If Matt Ryan is available, I would go after Matt Ryan. He's going to be a guy who will probably do really well. I'm trying to think. I'm looking at AFC East quarterbacks, and it's like, oh yeah, Josh Allen. No, maybe look into like, as I said, don't draft Dak Prescott. Maybe a Dak Prescott would be. I don't know the bye week of Miami. I don't have it in front of me right now. So I would have to see like what the bye week would look like with Dak, but I would definitely kind of maybe look at that and see if Dak has kind of a favorable matchup like against the New York Giants or Jets or someone like that.
Yeah, I would say maybe if you had Tua as your primary, I think that's fine. Again, I mentioned that Matt Ryan is an underrated quarterback, so maybe have him on the bench or in some matchups start him. I think Antonio Gibson in the flex is probably something I would say if you have an alternative flex, that's probably one to pay attention to. Irv Smith, I'm not really concerned with just because tight ends don't get you a lot of points to begin with. Once you get rid of Kelsey, Kittle, Waller, and Andrews, it's a crapshoot after that from 5 to 10 or 15, whoever your ranking consists of. So, I mean, Irv Smith at this point is just a person to fill in the spot. But I mean, you have Alvin Kamara, Christian McCaffrey, even if Christian McCaffrey is 50% of what he used to be, I think that's still top 10 upside with Alvin Kamara. Your two receivers are elite in themselves. So, I mean, this is a solid starting lineup.
He just asked for a flex, AJ Brown.
I'm not. Yeah, don't even finish that question. AJ Brown. Yeah.
Antonio Gibson is nice. I like him, but AJ Brown did a lot with Ryan Tannehill, who a lot of people are thinking that Malik Willis will overtake him, and Ryan Tannehill really struggled last year. believe me, I had him in one of my leagues. He struggled big time. So AJ Brown was so dominant that he made Ryan Tannehill kind of viable.
Yeah.
Jalen Hurts not only had a really good year last year. I'm not going to say great, but he's working with like Devontae Smith, who's really good. They just really upgraded like everywhere. And now they have AJ Brown. Yeah, I would go AJ Brown all day.
I agree. All right, Drew. So I'm just going to give you a couple of Drew Take questions since we're going to wrap pretty soon. We're running a little bit heavy on time here. All right. So the first one I'm going to give you, what are your initial thoughts with Tatis being suspended for PED violation?
I respect him for coming out and apologizing right away and just saying, I was trying not to do this stuff. Apparently, he kind of failed, obviously, and he owned it. So I appreciate that he owned it, unlike, Antonio Brown earlier this week, not owning literally anything that he did. Actually, he owned it so much that he was like, yeah, I don't regret any of it. But anyway, I respect Fernando Tatis in the same notion of like Deshaun Watson, where he kept denying it. Now all of a sudden he's coming out and being like, well, I apologize to the women that I may have impacted. Give me a break, man. You've been denying it. Now all of a sudden you're saying, at least Fernando Tatis came out right away and was like, you know what? I messed up. Unfortunately, I think it was a BS, thing. Oh, I was trying to fix ringworm. So you're taking steroids for ringworm? I'm not really quite sure how that works.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm not going to kill a guy for steroids. Listen, people are competitive. They're going to try and do things. Listen, A-Rod did it, and he ended up still playing, and everyone, apparently still kind of likes him. So kudos to him.
Yeah. Yeah, my initial thoughts are this is probably going to turn into like a comeback story for him when he gets back. He's going to hit some home runs. Padre fans are going to accept him back, and it's a dark day for them because they were really hoping for him to be available for them. But I think when he returns next season, he gets back in the swing of things. They're going to fall back in love with him with the Machado, Juan Soto, and Tatis lineup. And I think all is going to be forgiven. This is just going to be a blemish on his record at the early on stages of his career. And they're going to probably move on relatively quick, in my opinion. So, I'm glad that he fessed up to it. It's unfortunate that it came out in this type of news because I think he was like a week or two away from just returning to the majors from his injury that he suffered, I think, ironically during the offseason from something unrelated to baseball. But, nevertheless.
Yep.
All right. So last Drew Take question, Drew, that I'll give you. We won't get to the NBA one. We'll save that for another time.
Okay.
So as you know, as I alluded to earlier, the Raiders' first preseason game, they started Josh Jacobs in the Hall of Fame game, which was kind of surprising to a lot of people. We did talk about Zamir White and Kenyan Drake earlier today when we were talking about fantasy players. I'm curious, though, with all this developing, do you think that the Raiders would trade Josh Jacobs before the start of the regular season?
No, I don't. I don't think so at all. I think they're going to keep him. I think there was talks of, Josh Jacobs, can he stay healthy? I think that's what really the reason why they're doing it is to see how he looks coming off of injury-riddled season. Yes, Brandon Bolden. McDaniels knows what he has in Bolden. Abdullah is, he's been in the league for a while. Yes, Jacobs has been in the league for a while as well, but I think McDaniels really, really wanted to see what he could do with maybe a not so great offensive line or, not the greatest of offensive schemes. See what he can do. And so I think that's why they threw him out there. And I think Josh Jacobs, and especially as a running back, you kind of need to get hit a few times to really get in the groove of things. So I think that's really the reason why. And I think they do like Zamir White a lot. So, they want to see what Jacob's going to do with a little bit of pressure. Honestly, I don't think they're going to trade him at all. Maybe next year, possibly, if they think they have a lot in Zamir White. We'll see. But I think Josh Jacobs is going to be a Raider all year long. I don't see him being traded.
I hope our from the backseat friends forgive me, but I'm going to do a hot take real quick. I think that him playing in that first Hall of Fame game was basically an audition to show the rest of the league that he's available, he's healthy to play, and that he is on the market. I know that Josh McDaniels kind of shut that down. I just find it funny. You know, you made the point that he, you know, sometimes goes through injuries. He had a very productive season last year, and you know, you would think with a player, though, that may have some injury history, you would avoid putting them in the preseason as much as possible. I mean, Derek Carr is an injury-prone quarterback, and he didn't play in the Hall of Fame game, nor did Devontae Adams, because, you know, they're the stars. Why did they get to start in a Hall of Fame game that literally means nothing? You know, they dressed out, but they didn't play. So in the same respect, why did they do the same thing with Josh Jacobs, who is basically on a contract year? He's on the 5th year of his rookie deal, and so it's a prove-it year for him. And, you know, I think that this is the Raiders' opportunity because, again, they've made it known that they love their running back. They love their running back tandems that they have. They drafted Zamir White, as we mentioned. They have Kenyan Drake, who I think they absolutely love. You know, Ameer Abdullah, as you mentioned, is somebody that, you know, is growing fondly in the Raiders organization. Brandon Bolden is probably the odd man out in this, you know, in this roster, but, you know, he's there to compete and because he knows McDaniels' offense. But I think that it's not a stretch to say that Jacobs could be traded before the start of the regular season. I mean, how would you feel if he was offered up to the Cleveland Browns for Kareem Hunt? I mean, would that be something that you'd be interested in making that deal happen?
No, because I think Kareem Hunt is a guy who gets injured too. So it's kind of like you're trading an injured guy for an injured guy. And to be perfectly honest, Josh Jacobs has a little less tread on his tires. And doesn't have a civil lawsuit on his hands. So I'm going to go more with Josh Jacobs. Listen, the reason Carr and Adams aren't in there, they're getting paid a lot of money. As you said, Jacobs is on his 5th year deal on his rookie year. They're trying to get every little ounce of him. Again, I think he's coming off an injury-riddled season. Yes, you can make the argument of why would you start him, but at the same time, I could see why you would start him to kind of see what he does with a little contact after an injury season that he had. So, you know, I think it could go either way, but I don't think he's going to be traded at all.
All right. Well, that's all the Drew takes I have for you, man.
Oh boy! All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us. JCJ, I will shout you out, man. Thank you for all the questions. Nick as well, man. Thank you for the questions. He's probably at work, so that's probably why.
Yeah,
that's probably why.
I think he's probably been watching the whole time. Maybe not, but he's been with us for a while. Yeah.
So appreciate all the questions. Hey, we want to continue to do that. I know we go a little bit later most of the time, but, you know, that's kind of when we can record. Family's got to come first, unfortunately. Nah, not unfortunately. I love it, man. But anyway, we do appreciate all the questions and, you know, keep them coming. We want to answer them as much as we can. So thank you very much. Go check us out on all the social media sites. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, like and comment, please. And like I said, subscribe on there. We always want to hear from you. And you know, comment on the videos. We will see those. And if you have questions on the videos, we will answer those on our next episode when we are live, which is usually Thursdays. This was kind of an outlier where it's on Fridays. But you know, like we said, ask us questions. We want to answer them. Hey, if we get enough questions, man, we could have a whole episode where we just answer questions, which would be really cool, honestly.
Yeah. No doubt.
But anyway, and hopefully we're going to do a little bit more fantasy football questions, especially with fantasy football coming up here. So check us all out on those social media sites. We're going to put out a lot more TikToks this week. Just because our connection is a lot better on this one.
Yeah, no kidding.
So thank you guys who are already following us on there, but thank you for the people who will follow us. Always appreciate it. And then go to all the major podcasts where we want to get a rate and review from you. Anything and everything does help, even if it's a 1-star or a 5-star. We always want to hear from you. If it's a 1-star, let us know what you don't like so we can get better and grow. And give us, if it is a 5-star, let us know what you like so we can continue to do that. So, and like I said, anything and everything does help. So we appreciate all of that. And then go check out our partners over at fnxfitness.com. They just had a lot of sales like the last couple of weeks. So check them out. They are having a lot of sales right now. They have great workout gear, great workout supplements. They just came out with some new gear. I think it was once it's gone type of a thing, but it was, they're coming out with some new stuff, man. So go scoop it up. But I really like their supplements. That is one of their stuff that I really like to get. So go check out if you're going to the gym, you do all these protein shakes, pre-workout, post-workout type stuff. Go check them out. They got great stuff, protein bars, all that stuff. So go check them out. It is really good stuff. It is probably the best stuff I've ever had, and I try and get it as often as I can. So go check it out. So and we can actually get you 15% off by using our code, which will be in the link in the episode, either in the podcast, YouTube, all of our social media sites. So go click that link and you can get 15% off your whole purchase. I'm going to pass it off to Cody for the final stuff that he's going to say.
That's exactly right, you guys. Also, too, you can visit our link tree. We have all the links to basically all of our social medias, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, just like what Drew had mentioned. Also, too, you can find some Amazon links to get podcast mics like what I'm using in case you guys are interested in it. I would highly recommend if you guys are starting a podcast journey to do so. And get the best gear so that way you guys have the best chance of getting started. We appreciate you guys so much. We are actually doing a fantasy football league with some sports podcasters. So shout out to Stuff About Sports. They invited us on there, so we will be on there and we'll keep you guys updated on how we do. Drew and I are doing one team together, so that'll be a lot of fun. And we just created our league for our sports podcaster one. So be on the lookout for that. We'll be doing a live stream of that draft when it comes out. It should be a ton of fun. And of course, we're going to be giving you guys fantasy football updates from week to week. So please be on the lookout for that. Again, you guys, we appreciate you guys so much for listening and hanging in there with us for this longer live stream than normal, but we are so thankful for you guys. Next week, we are doing the NFC West. We are just about to round out our NFL record prediction. So we're right around the corner. So we got the second to last division coming up, and then we finish off the AFC West, of course, which is where our Raiders are at, of course. So we cannot wait for that. So it's going to be a ton of fun. Drew, man, thank you so much for hanging out, and thank you all for listening. Please subscribe, download, rate, and review like Drew had mentioned, and we will catch you guys on the next episode. Thank you all so much, and we'll see you later.
See you.